Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's your girl Lori. If you are new here, I am an alternative therapist, so I work a lot with self-love, self-help, anxiety, depressions, you name it, I kind of cover it. It's all about trying to get you back to what's gonna make you at least feel balanced. So if that's interesting to you, consider subscribing, hitting the bell in the corner for notification. You'll get notified every time I post. So let's jump into it, guys. Let's talk about validation. And listen, if you guys are even still here, because sometimes when you hear, hey, let's talk about self-validation or validation from others, people are like, no, that's way too much. It's way too intense. So keep in mind that a lot of times if you're trying to heal and you're trying to feel better about yourself and you don't have the direction and it's scary. By the way, self-healing is scary. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Not in a negative scary. It just is going to force you to bring things up. So when we start talking about needing validation from other people, that can be triggering. So why do we need validation and what would that even look like? So let's not get that confused with a compliment. It's nice to say, hey, nice shirt. That looks really nice on you. That's fine. That's not validation, that's a compliment. So don't get them mixed up. Validation is, yes, I think this is a good decision for you. No, I wouldn't do that. Oh, you need this? Yes. Or the house looks good. And like you need that validation, that acknowledgement. And why do you need it from somebody else? So that's like the heart of this video is, why do you need that? Well, I'm gonna tell you, that's always gonna go back to a trauma response. And keep in mind, trauma doesn't always mean like over the top trauma. Trauma is gonna be very geared to each one of you individually, right? So trauma doesn't have to be gauged by what other issues other people have had and what you consider trauma. So let's go into that a little bit deeper as far as that validation. When you're seeking outside validation, it's because you're not trusting your inside validation. And honestly, you may have never had those tools. And where would that come from? Here's an example. Let's say growing up, you were told, you were younger, and you were told, nope, that's not right. You're doing that wrong. Nope, you can't do that right. Nope, you're not doing this right. So you kept hearing, and you don't realize that that's a trauma, but it is. It's an emotional trauma. Is when you're constantly sort of being scrupuloused, that's not a word, right? When you're being like targeted all the time of the things that you're not doing right, internally you start feeling like, well, any feeling I have is not valid. Any decision I'm making is not right, or is it right? I'm not sure. This is how you know if you have a hard time making a decision of something for yourself, like, oh, do I want Chinese or do I want Italian? And you're like, I don't know, like, which one do I want? Now, sometimes it could just be your taste buds, you really just don't know. So don't read into that. But it can also be like, I don't know, because when I make a decision, sometimes it's the wrong decision. What if I make the wrong decision, right? Then you start getting in your head. So it is gonna be about, so you're like, great, how do I heal it? That's gonna be about going back through your trauma and identifying it. So typically I do that with my alternative therapy clients. And the reason that I recommend some form of therapy is because therapists are not miracle workers. That's not what therapists or alternative therapists do. All we do is guide you. So I'm Glenda the Good Witch, you're Dorothy, and put you on the yellow brick road and then give you the tools along the way and then how to use those tools. And so that's important because so many people stress out and they go, well, I don't want to have to feel other people's validation. Why do I feel other people's validation? Why do I need it? And so understanding that, acknowledging it and being okay with the fact that that's what you've needed because that's been your survival guide. It doesn't matter that it hasn't really necessarily served you, because also you will often put your life on hold or not even know what direction you want to go in because you're like, well, I guess I don't really want to be a lawyer. I think I want to be a farmer. You know what I mean? Or I don't want to be a farmer, I want to be a lawyer. And it doesn't really matter because you're not really clear with who you are. And a lot of that is going to come from not being given the tools when you were younger because they were sort of stripped away from you because you couldn't really make that call. And digging deeper, right? It's never about villainizing parents or other guardians that were there. Sometimes they're doing the best that they can with what they have. And maybe that was the same thing that they had. And a lot of times people say, well, how do I break that cycle with my children? Or how can I break that cycle where I'm not doing that anymore? And I've told you guys this on countless occasions. It's not an overnight fix. You're not gonna have an overnight fix. If that's what you're looking for, not gonna happen, right? I can give you tools to help you along the way, and I totally will. However, it's not an overnight fix. You can't also go, well, okay, that was like 35, 45 years ago. I'm an adult now. I can't worry about that. None of that bothered me. No, it really has. It really has, because it frames your thoughts, right? So it's about going back to that trauma center. These people may never validate you. They may never apologize. You've got to be okay with that. And that also has got to be a level of self-forgiveness too, because you're allowed to have any feelings that you have because they're valid, right? That's your validation. And that's where I want you to get really snuggly, cozy, and warm, is understanding that even though somebody in the past has told you that you can't make a decision or you can't do something right, doesn't mean that you need to go seek everybody else's validation. These are all regular people like you and I. Regular people having their same thing. So ask yourself, and this is a little bit of a homework question, is ask yourself why that validation is so important for you, right? And also keeping in mind, just because you maybe like to validate somebody, and again, don't get that confused with a compliment. Complimenting somebody versus validation, right? And I know that words of affirmation is a part of the 5 love languages, and that's okay until that's all you need, until like that's a mandatory need. Even if that's your #1 love language, words of affirmation, which is basically like, good job, nice work, okay? Yes, but you don't have to say that with every little thing, right? So you also don't want to be the person walking on eggshells, but first and foremost, you want to get very clear on what you even look like. What do you like? And that's where you have to go back and start working on some of that trauma, or even acknowledging it. And you may be like, I don't know where I had trauma. Like, why do I feel that way? Well, you did. Like, it is a trauma response. And just keeping in mind that when you hear the word trauma, don't get caught up in trauma. Like, don't get caught up in that. Keep in mind that it's relative to you, and things that are going to be traumatic for you at 5 is going to be different for you at 35, right? So just know that ideally we want to get you to the place of knowing it's nice if somebody else acknowledges it. It's nice. I like it. That's great. It's joyful. It adds the icing to my cake, but I don't need that. I have the cake because the cake is me, right? And it's just getting comfortable with that and knowing that, by the way, it's okay to not know how to do that. We'll work on some tools. So with that being said, I'll talk to you soon. And remember, you are valid.